Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Larry Rosen from the Ajax Public Library, and I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to visit us here this evening. Before we start, I just want to let everybody know that the Zoom session is being recorded. Please feel free to turn off the camera if you wish. You may also wish to change the Zoom to a speaker view, which lets you concentrate on the speaker. All right. So I have the honor and privilege of introducing you to the author of Holistic Wealth, founder of the Institute of Holistic Wealth, and so much more. Keisha Blair, you're in for a treat this evening because Keisha has so much great information that she's going to share with us about holistic wealth and how it can give you strength and motivation to live the life that you want to live. I'm going to first just give a little more detailed introduction to Keisha, and then Keisha's going to do some opening remarks, and then I'm going to ask Keisha some questions about this topic because I want to learn too about financial stability, physical health, emotional, spiritual connections, all of that other good stuff. And then after our chat, we'll open it up to some questions. You can put questions in the chat if you like, and I will we'll follow up afterwards. Thank you for muting the microphones at the beginning. And I'm just going to switch now to a PowerPoint. And if you could just take a quick peek at this, I just wanted to let everyone know that we just want you to have some fun, be respectful, friendly, patient, present, and we welcome you and thank you for coming tonight. And so Keisha Blair is an award-winning international best-selling author of Holistic Wealth, 32 life lessons to help you find purpose, prosperity, and happiness. She is regarded as the mother of the holistic wealth and founder of the Holistic Wealth movement. And she's the founder of the Institute of Holistic Wealth. And Keisha's forthcoming book is entitled Holistic Wealth Expanded and Updated, 36 Life Lessons to help you recover from disruption, find your life purpose, and achieve financial freedom. And that's going to be released on the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day. And the foreword was written by iconic actress Kelly Rutherford, star of Gossip Girl, Melrose Place, and Dynasty. And Keisha Blair has also been profiled in the New York Times, Real Simple magazine, Forbes, Harvard Business Review, Essence magazine, and many other publications. Her viral article, My Husband Died at Age 34, Here Are 40 Life Lessons I Learned from It, was viewed by more than 50 million people globally. Her book, Holistic Wealth, has been well received and highly influential TV audience, such as the producers of Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talk, the producers of the Mel Robbins Show, formerly of Oprah's Favorite Things, as well as Yahoo Finance's The Final Round. And Keisha is the host of the Holistic Wealth segment on the award-winning internationally syndicated Daily Flash TV show and hosts Holistic Wealth podcast. She can be found at KeishaBlair.com. Okay, and I'm just going to stop the share and hand it over now to Keisha.
Thank you so much, Larry, for that wonderful introduction. It's always so good to join with everyone to discuss this topic. And so I'm going to just start by sharing my screen with everyone so that you can all see my slides as well. Right, so hoping everyone can see.
You can see
that wonderful view right there. Okay, perfect. So I'm just going to go right through, the presentation, and then afterwards, feel free as I go along, to put some questions in the chat or hold your questions for the end. I'm so happy to take questions afterwards. I love engaging with the audience. So feel free, if anything pops up, while I'm presenting, then feel free to ask me your questions afterwards. So Larry introduced me a while ago, and that was such a wonderful introduction. And it's been quite the journey to this moment, actually. And, Larry mentioned this viral article that I wrote some years ago entitled, "My Husband Died at Age 34. Here are 40 life lessons I learned from it." Now, that article was viewed by more than 50 million people worldwide. And that's what started this journey that we're on right now. That viral article was turned into the first edition of the book that you're seeing on screen. And now the second edition of the book is going to be released on March 8th on International Women's Day. And as Larry mentioned, the foreword for that book was written by Kelly Rutherford. So that book is actually available for pre-order right now. But I just want to take you back to a moment in time and walk you through this journey that I've been on. So when my husband died, that was 8 weeks after I gave birth to my second child. I was a 31-year-old woman at the time who had just given birth to my second child. I had a 3-year-old as well. And so that was a very traumatic experience for me. We're all living through COVID-19. So we're all going through this form of collective trauma. So this is why, this holistic wealth framework and concept is so important right now. I think it's one of the most important concepts of this generation for us, this COVID-19, this holistic wealth generation, as I like to call it, because I find, and I think it presents the perfect framework for what we want to have and what we aspire to in a post-COVID world, which is having a life well lived, living with meaning, living with purpose. And so the whole aspect of holistic wealth is that, so many people want to define or redefine this whole concept of wealth. Traditionally, when we think of wealth, we think about or net worth, or material possessions. But as COVID has shown, we really need to redefine that concept, right? Because now everybody's realizing our physical health or mental health or emotional health is so intertwined and is also so important for prosperity and for the life we want to live. And so that's the whole concept and definition of holistic wealth. And when we refer to holistic wealth, that's what we're referring to. And once you get a copy of the book and you start reading through the story and the journey, it becomes ever more clear that it is the art of recovery from disruption. And especially in the second edition of the book, I talk about the art of recovery from disruption a lot, especially because of COVID-19. And we're all looking for that art of how to recover from this disruption, because so many of us have suffered various kinds of losses. Like, we have people who've lost loved ones during COVID-19. People have lost jobs. People have lost so many different things. There's loss of health. So many people came down with different illnesses. And so it's, how do we recover from those life-altering setbacks? And I'm going to go through a few concepts, not all of them, because we can't cover everything tonight, but there are a few concepts that are easy to grasp, that are super beneficial for us as we move through this and as we think about what we want our lives to look like. Now, one thing that was shared with you all, and I think Larry sent out the link to it, is this personal financial identity. And in the second edition of Holistic Wealth, I have an entire chapter on this in the book, because during the first half of lockdown, when people read the first edition of the book, people came back and they were like, well, you mentioned it in the book. what does this really mean and how do we identify it? And in the book, I mentioned that it's critical that everyone can identify their personal financial identity and that everyone know how to embrace the strengths and weaknesses of it. It helps us to better achieve our goals, to understand others, to plan ahead. And just as important, it helps us to know other people's tendencies. It helps us to work with them more effectively. So whether it's our spouses or parents or business partners, managers, everyone can take advantage of this framework to reduce conflict, to have more empathy for others, and just to plan our lives better. Because in the book, I stated that we all enter into adulthood with these belief systems. We all enter into marriage, into relationships with spouses, and we all influence each other, which is normal, right? And so we have lots of influences around us. But how much time have we actually taken to formulate, to identify with this personal financial identity so we can craft our own goals? Well, this is important. And I think many of you have already taken the quiz, which is phenomenal. And so there are 4 here you'll see listed in this overlapping Venn diagram. There's the minimalist, the risk taker, the anxious spender / investor, and there's the maximalist. And each of these tendencies has strengths and weaknesses. And when people ask me, because I've done so many of these presentations on holistic wealth, which is why I'm narrowing down on a few concepts that we can grasp quickly, that we can really walk away from this event tonight more emboldened, so we can take those micro steps, right, to start living that holistically wealthy lifestyle. And so this is one of those micro steps that you can do right now, that's quick and easy, that you can get your result right away. The quiz takes 2 minutes, and you can identify your personal financial identity and start crafting your money goals. This should be the basis for all your money goals, this framework, and then you use that to craft all of your goals. And on the Institute on Holistic Wealth website, you'll find the link. I think Larry has posted it in the chat as well. And so that's one very important micro step that we can all take to start living that holistically wealthy lifestyle. So in the second edition of the book, I also talk about these 2 key concepts. One is financial resilience and one is financial resourcefulness. And I talk about resilience and financial resilience a lot. When we think about COVID-19, the concept of resilience has been a very important one for everyone. And we see it, being thrown around in the media a lot. We hear everyone talking about the concept of financial resilience. So what is it? Well, financial resilience is the ability to bounce back from financial setbacks, and possibly even bounce back better than before. And so it's an important concept. And as you can imagine, for those of us who've gone through life-altering setbacks, one of the key ways that we measure our holistic wealth portfolio, and that's what I'm training an army of holistic wealth consultants to do now, is to help people craft their own holistic wealth portfolios. One of the key aspects, or one of the key things, is financial resilience. And that's how resilient are we financially? Could we weather a storm personally? So if you look at your personal finances, if you look at your situation today, would you be able to weather a storm? How financially resilient are you? And so they're building blocks of that as well, as I discuss in the book, and you'll see it all laid out there clearly in that chapter too. That's one entire chapter. And so the next concept is the concept of financial resourcefulness. And that is also similarly a very important topic. So if you think about people who have lost jobs, people who've lost a spouse, lost a loved one close to them, one of the key indicators of whether or not they'll be able to bounce back quickly or whether they'll be able to weather this storm is their level of financial resourcefulness. When we talk about financial resourcefulness, it speaks for itself in terms of being resourceful in the face of setbacks. How well can I tap into that portfolio to leverage it to allow me to be resourceful? What are those relationships that I have? Of course, relationships are a key factor in holistic wealth, because you'll see the quote at the bottom of the slide here, where I say holistic wealth is about you creating the circumstances in your life that allows you to be resilient and resourceful. And in the book, you'll hear me say time and time again that holistic wealth is living intentionally by design. So it's not something that just drops in our laps. It's something that we have to be intentional, like highly intentional. And every single step has to be crafted around our vision or mission and our values. Of course, one of the other things that I always state is that everyone craft a personal mission statement. And that personal mission statement will guide you on your life journey. It's the summation of who you are, what you want your life to look like, and it's based on all these values that are unique to you. And of course, in the Holistic Wealth personal workbook, I have a copy here that's a companion workbook to the Holistic Wealth main book. You know, there are case studies in there that walk you through crafting your personal mission statement. The Institute on Holistic Wealth has a template on the website that you can also get to help you craft it. And it's really based on your own values. So when you think about some values that might inform your mission statement, you're looking at values like loyalty, community oriented, goal centered, things like that, that will help you craft your mission statement. And of course, your money and your financial identity is all a part of that, as well as crafting a money statement as a sub item in your overall mission statement. And so if you go back to the personal financial identity quiz, that is the basis for that kind of money statement that you can craft. And so I have a few videos here that I've posted the links on here. They're on my YouTube channel where I talk about overcoming setbacks and financial empowerment for women, where these two concepts are also discussed. So in the book, I outline what's known as the Holistic Wealth Method and the Holistic Wealth Mindset. Now, each of us makes at least 36,000 decisions each and every day. And if you think about it, from the minute we get up, we start making key decisions in our lives. From the minute we wake up to the minute we go back to bed. And decisions like, what do I eat for breakfast? Who am I meeting with today? What route am I driving to work? What do I wear? What am I having for dinner? Where do I go for lunch? What do I eat? 36,000 decisions each and every single day we all make. And so when we think about the Holistic Wealth Method, it's a decision-making framework for how we make our decisions. So I talk about this theoretical Holistic Wealth bank account. And if you think about your Holistic Wealth bank account, there are things that can deplete us and there are things that can enrich us, things that act as additions to our Holistic Wealth bank account. And when we think about those 36,000 decisions each and every day, the aim is to make decisions that enrich us, that are additions to our Holistic Wealth bank account, not depletions that will cause us to go bankrupt, right? So when we think about, okay, what do I eat for breakfast? We're thinking about something enriching, nourishing, healthy, something that will nourish our bodies, help us with our mental and our physical health, right? And so every single decision, and this is the key about the Holistic Wealth mindset, we have to really be mindful of our daily decisions. So when we talk about the subconscious mind, it's rooted in habits and patterns, and we're 95% on autopilot. And this is one way to get us out of autopilot and really be conscious about the decisions we're making. And if you think about those 36,000 decisions each and every day, then if we're making those decisions mindfully, intentionally, with that daily goal of enriching that holistic wealth bank account, then think about how much more, improved our lives would be. Similarly, if we make those decisions mindlessly, without thinking about that holistic wealth bank account and depleting it every single day until we get bankrupt, we feel empty. That's sadly the state that many people or some people are in right now during COVID-19. And I think this is the time where we're all in this collective moment where we're trying to craft our post-pandemic lives, where we can think about how we enrich that holistic wealth bank account. And so that's the holistic wealth method. And the mindset is basically, the holistic wealth mindset is a companion to that. So in the holistic wealth workbook, I talk about, the holistic scarcity mindset and the holistic wealth mindset. And it's amazing because it's a framework for risk taking. It's a framework for how we see life in terms of win-win or win-lose terms. And it's really helpful in terms of, crafting our goals, living a life full of meaning, not thinking about setbacks in terms of permanent terms, but in temporary terms, so that it really makes us more resilient. And so there is a table right here that I talk about that. And I know it's not very clear right now, but that's basically it in a nutshell. And I'm holding up the holistic wealth workbook right now. So that's all laid out right there. So when we think of the holistic wealth method, again, it's a framework that we can apply to all aspects of our lives. We can think about it in terms of our relationships. So with our spouse, with our health, with our money, with our career, our goals in life. I mean, we can apply this holistic wealth method to all the key aspects of our lives. And when we apply it, it's a framework that helps us to make better decisions. Because as you can see from that graphic there, we're making deposits. And even though it might be a coin at a time, it might be a penny at a time, it really adds up. Each and every single addition we make to that bank account adds up to having that holistically wealthy lifestyle. And so I just have some resources here, and Larry mentioned them also in the beginning in his introduction. So on the Institute on Holistic Wealth website, the quiz is there. There are a whole list of resources, there are online courses. As I mentioned before, this journey started with that viral article, but now we have an entire global movement. We have holistic wealth consultants whom I've trained, people who've joined the program. There's a course there, a certification program. And what they're doing now is they're going out in their communities and they're helping people build their holistic wealth bank accounts. And they're helping people build their holistic wealth portfolios, more importantly. And so they're training, they're giving workshops in their communities, they're helping kids and teens with financial literacy. The list goes on. On the Holistic Wealth podcast, I have a weekly show and we have amazing guests on a weekly basis. And you can subscribe to that. I think the link is in the chat. We have lots of episodes on money mindset, money blocks, all aspects of holistic wealth related to mental health, physical health. And we've had some amazing episodes. The last few episodes have been on financial trauma, holistic healing. So those are some of the topics that we've had recently. As well, my website also has resources, blog articles, and of course I do one-on-one coaching as well. And I do have lots of holistic wealth videos on my YouTube channel. So if you want to check that out as well, you can. Now I do want to leave some time for a Q&A session. So I didn't want to take up the entire time going through a slide deck. I really want us to have that discussion component. I know people probably have questions that they want to ask, whether it's about the book or about my journey. And I really wanted us to really have that time. Of course, if you have taken the quiz, then feel free to ask me questions about your personal financial identity. Feel free to ask me questions about the quiz or the podcast, about anything else related to holistic wealth that you've seen, or anything else that you've seen possibly in the news, or in relation to your own life that you think you want to get clarity on. So I think we'll use the rest of the session for that, and I'll just hand over to Larry again to facilitate that.
That's great. Thank you so much. That is such great information. And I must say, when you mentioned about the mission statement and the money statement, I thought it's been my experience that if you write something down, it kind of gets done a little more easier than if you just think about doing it. And so that's powerful for me personally. I don't know about everybody else, but
Mhm.
that struck a chord.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, yeah.
um, yeah, I have some questions. I'm just if anyone else has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or unmute your mic, and please ask Keisha regarding anything, the book, the podcast, or anything that she's mentioned. Please feel free to jump in. Um, I was curious about uh, just basic uh, thoughts and beliefs, because I see people work so hard and money doesn't come to them, and then I see other people who hardly work and they just attract money. And does that have anything to do with thoughts and beliefs and how you think?
It absolutely does. And it's amazing you asked that, Larry, because we recently had a podcast episode about financial trauma and rewriting your own personal money story. And that was with Dr. Nicole LaPera, a clinical psychologist who studied at Cornell. And we had an amazing discussion around beliefs, belief patterns, the subconscious, and around the act of rewriting your personal money story, but even before that, money mindset and money blocks. So I this book, Holistic Wealth, is wrapped up in money mindset. And absolutely, your mindset can either hinder you or it can propel you forward. And as you said, Larry, like, you see a number of people just getting ahead. They're constantly earning, they're earning more. And it seems that some people are getting ahead and some people can't. And early in my career too, I had that question. And I can say without a doubt, right now, it's all related to your mindset, that mindset that you need to have to empower you. And so, yes, for many of us, we grew up with, in a certain environment. And studies show that by age 7, we all form these beliefs. So by age 7, most of us have established beliefs. We have patterns that are formed by our environment. And depending on how our parents viewed money, depending on how their parents viewed money, and what was passed down through generations, we had an episode called Ancestral Money Blocks. And so many people have come on the podcast and they've talked about their parents living through the Holocaust or their parents living through World War II. And so scarcity and a scarcity mindset is something that we have to look out for. It's something that can hinder growth. And it's something that I talk a lot about in the book, and you'll hear me talk about it on the podcast, because I think the number one key to success is your mindset. And I'm 100% sure that I've interviewed, for the first edition of the book, I interviewed more than 150 experts. And through the podcast now, I've interviewed close to 70, because it's just been a year for a podcast. And I can guarantee the number one key to success is your mindset. And so that's something that we have to look out for, our belief patterns. And we have to think about our thoughts. Do we have negative self-talk? Do we have critical thoughts? What are our views around money? Does it make you uncomfortable? Do you talk about it? Are you
It's
comfortable communicating?
it's like thinking of ways that it can't be done instead of thinking of ways that it could be done.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. And if you listen to that episode of the podcast that I referenced with Dr. Nicole LaPera, that's what she says as well, is do we build up money walls? Are we building up, barriers? Are we putting up fake constraints where they're not needed? And I talk about that in the book too. I talk about the fake versus the real constraints. And many of us actually go throughout life building up these fake constraints that really don't exist. Some of them do. And I go through the book with that. But the number one key here is mindset. And that's why I talk about it so much, because I want everyone to be conscious of their mindset.
Thank you. Crystal has a question in the chat, and it's, as a millennial, is it possible and advisable to invest some of my money in stock market instead of just saving in banks with low interest?
So that's a great question, Crystal. And yes, given that you're a millennial, it means that you're in the prime of your life. You can take on more risk. I'm not going to say go out and do anything very risky that you're not comfortable with, that's against your personal financial identity. But yes, I would advise you to look at, probably safer stocks that do provide you with a return rather than the riskier ones, and really talk to a financial advisor. Crystal, I don't know if you have a financial advisor, but I think everyone needs to have one. And, everyone needs to look at their investment identity as a part of your personal financial identity and what you're comfortable investing in. But I think the key advice that all of us tend to give, whether you're a financial advisor or you're an economist, is yes, when you're younger, you can take on a bit more risk, because when you reach closer to retirement, that's when you want to start getting more safe to protect whatever you've earned, and your investments. But right now, and you need to look at the market as well, but right now, whether it's stocks or real estate, or any other investment that you like, yes, the key is right now is building up that buffer, that building up your investments. And I always advise, when you're younger, take the risks that you can't take when you start to reach towards retirement. So definitely, Crystal, if you have a financial advisor, if you want to talk to me somewhere offline, I'll be happy to help. But yes, generally the rule of thumb is that if you can take on more risk when you're younger, then yeah, it's better to do so than to stay in conservative investments, like just having a bank account where you're earning maybe 1% on your savings right now.
Very good. Yes, very good information. Does anyone else have any other questions? Please feel free to unmute your mic or continue to put in the chat any questions. I've certainly got questions. The more I hear, the more I want to find out more about this topic. And new to Canada, and you just want to take steps on how to build your life. Well, you've certainly come to the right place, I think.
Absolutely. And yes, and from that immigrant perspective, as well as being new to Canada, that's an experience that many of us have or have been through. And definitely you want to take the steps you can take to build up that life portfolio, that holistic wealth portfolio. And definitely, especially right now in your life at the stage that you're in, it's a good time to be doing that and to be looking at that, because I think my life is a testament, right? I became widowed at 31, not thinking I would become widowed. Luckily, I had invested though. Luckily, I had taken steps. We had a life insurance policy. We had several critical investments. I was investing heavily up to that point, and that's why I can, say with confidence that yes, you never know what can happen. So you want to build up that nest egg so that if and when you have that life altering setback, that you can weather that storm.
Okay, another question I was thinking was regarding your book. It mentions the term victim mindset and flipping the script. And it's regarding, I think, where you feel always trapped and there's no way out. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit
Yes,
about that.
absolutely. So, just going back to the question you asked me about, and I wrote an article about this too, which was, I think I saw a stat that said 95% of the world's population is stuck in a victim mindset. And this victim mindset has us trapped. And if we stay there in that valley, and I call this valley, if we stay in that valley, it's hard to achieve our goals. It's hard to achieve holistic wealth with this victim mindset. And it's easy to fall into that, especially as we're going through this pandemic. And you turn on the TV and you watch the news and you see the death rates going up. You see people dying, the economy is tanking, inflation is high right now, the cost of living is going up. It's easy to feel hopeless and it's easy to fall into that victim mindset. But it's one of the traps that I would, challenge everyone right now listening in not to fall into that trap. It's easy to fall in and it's hard to get out. It's easy to fall in and it's hard to get out. So that's why I think being intentional about our thoughts, flipping that script. And so flipping the script comes into play when we fall into that victim mindset and we know that negative self-talk starts happening. It's that talk that says you'll never be successful, you'll never reach where you want to reach. It will always be like this. This is just a cycle that will keep happening. I'm never going to succeed. This is just hopeless, right? Why even bother? That's that script that keeps playing and we know it. And when you try to flip the script, you know how you can go through that rabbit hole, right? It starts with the same script. The feelings come on, and then gradually you feel yourself going down and down and down. And so what I advise everyone to do is hit pause. Hit pause before you go down and down and down. Flip the script. As soon as those thoughts come in, switch the thought and think about something more positive. Channel gratitude, whatever it is in your life right now that is going well, your relationships, your loved ones, your job, whatever it is that you can hang on to, that love that surrounds you. That's what we need to think about, especially during COVID-19, where it seems hopeless. That's what we need to think about. And so when I talk about flipping the script in the book, that's what I'm talking about. And I do hope everyone gets a chance to read it. Because there's a lot wrapped up in that, and there's a lot of stages and process and everything, right? It's not as simple as it sounds, and it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not an easy process, but it's something that if we start that new pattern, if we start trying to rewire our brains, start a new pattern intentionally, that's what we can do.
Yeah, in addition to the book, I like the fact that you also offer like a podcast. I mean, I am a big fan of podcasts because they allow me to listen while I'm doing other things. Not that I'm not paying attention
Right.
during the podcast, but it's such a great way. It's a different way to get the similar. I mean, the book, it doesn't replace the book, but it gives it colorizes it even more. Am I correct?
Absolutely.
It adds.
Absolutely. And we can go in detail into different topics, and we can dissect different topics in the book, especially as they become topical, as people are grappling with them in the news. There's lots of financial trauma going on right now during COVID-19. And I don't know how many people are even aware of how much it's happening and how much it can affect us all. And that's why that episode was there, especially recently with Dr. Nicole LaPera, and also the episode that I did on holistic healing. That's another crucial one that we need during this time as well. So yeah, absolutely. It complements everything, and it's amazing if you have the book to also sit with a podcast and go through. I think that's even a great combination.
And it's great, even though if you don't have internet, you just download it and then you can take it anywhere. This next question is going to make me hungry, but you mentioned it in your book, about physical and spiritual nourishment. And I think you might have touched on it earlier by what you eat, watching what you eat and things like that. Is that what that's referring to, or?
Yep, absolutely. So the physical nourishment has to do with what we eat, what we take in physically. And when I talked about the holistic wealth method and making sure that we're nourishing ourselves each and every day, especially now during COVID, where our bodies need that nourishment to fight whatever we're exposed to. It's even more important for immune systems, for us to be able to strengthen our immune system. So that's key. And also there's spiritual nourishment, which is also just as important as that, if not even more, because I find that when we go through a life-altering setback, there's so many things that can happen to us mentally and emotionally. And I spoke about some earlier, even with the negative self-talk, that spiritual enrichment helps with that. So whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation, prayer, and I have a whole chapter on each of those, and employing mindfulness and meditation, prayer, again, those are the key aspects. Tuning into your intuition, listening to your gut, really letting that guide your daily decisions. And whatever that looks like for you, that daily routine, whatever that looks like for you is critical. And in the book, I talk about my sabbatical, where I really took a year to pause and to really, get into the spiritual side, to overcome that tragedy. That's also a useful tool for anyone as well. And even in the Holistic Wealth Personal Workbook, there are exercises in there that help us to do that. And of course, there's journaling, channeling gratitude, things like that too, that enrich us spiritually. So I think all these aspects of holistic wealth definitely work together to enrich us, to have that holistically wealthy lifestyle. And as you can see, like, these key pillars are so important. There's none, it's like a stool where one leg is off and it can't stand. It's just really these pillars that work together, and they're so important.
The famous mute button. Gabriel, please. You have a question. Feel free to.
I do.
Yeah, welcome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So Keisha, I just had a question. I was, really, a lot of what you were saying was really resonating with me, and, especially your talk with the pandemic and all these things that have, altered life for us and kind of forced us to adjust in ways and challenged us in ways that we've never had to. And just looking at the personal financial identity framework that you were discussing and those 4 categories, I was just wondering if, when you identified those categories, for somebody who takes the quiz and gets their response, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase my question. Was it designed in a way that for viewers and readers, they should just take that category, accept it, and learn more about it? Or are those categories designed almost on a spectrum where there's almost like an ideal place where we should be to function in a way that's most beneficial for, like, our spiritual well-being or our mental well-being or emotional or something like that?
Yeah, no, great question. And so definitely we're all on a spectrum. So like with many of these types of personality quizzes, we're definitely on a spectrum. So like, to give you an example, I'm the risk taker, and I've known that for a very long time, even before I built this framework. Like I knew I had a very high tolerance for risk, and my appetite for risk is high, but still I know that I'm nowhere near some entrepreneurs that I see taking the types of risks they do. Like, I know some of them sell their homes for their businesses, they sell their cars, and they sell everything and put into a business. Now, I can't say that I would be comfortable taking that kind of risk, but yet still I'm a risk taker. So definitely we're all on a spectrum. And I think when you take the quiz, and this is the advice that I give everyone, like, really meditate on each question there and really write down and think about your personal money story, how you see life within that category. And you can tell which one you're trending towards kind of towards the end too, right? By the time you reach the last 3 or 4, you kind of have an idea. And think about where you may fall. And of course, I've heard people say to me, even on the podcast, even on that episode with financial trauma, Dr. LaPera, who's a clinical psychologist, said to me that she thinks like maybe even 10 years ago, she might have been an anxious spender. Whereas right now she's a risk taker, and she had to switch her money mindset from being an anxious spender to a risk taker. And it was because of her background with her parents, and her parents, passing on various values to her, which were very good. It is something we're all used to in terms of safety and security. But she realized that the value she would need to be a successful entrepreneur had to do more with risk taking and not necessarily safety and security in a 9-to-5. And so what I'm trying to say here is your personal financial identity, even though it's rooted in you, and in some ways, most of us generally tend to be the same, we can intentionally change if we need to. Like, we can take the steps we need to take. For instance, I know people who've come on the podcast as anxious spenders, right? They don't need to remain anxious spenders. They don't need to have anxiety around money for the rest of their lives, for the rest of their days until the end. If they want to get rid of that anxiety, they can. They can take the steps to do it. And as you mentioned, they can take the steps to do it intentionally in a way where they meet that happy medium for what they need to be successful in life. So whether that happy medium is going from an anxious spender to a risk taker, going from an anxious spender to just a minimalist, whatever it is, and all of these identities, all of them have, there's no best or worst. They all have strengths and weaknesses, and we can all thrive in whichever one we are. We just need to know the strengths and weaknesses. We need to know how to embrace the strengths, minimize the weaknesses, and counteract whatever we need to be successful. So I hope that answers the question. But we also have a personal financial identity online course that's on the site. So if it's something you want to delve deeper in, that's also there. And of course, if there's something you want to ask me about, after this, like, I'm free to respond to questions even afterwards if you have deeper questions on the framework. But generally, as I said, like, the insights that we've been having on the podcast, most of my guests take the quiz and they come on ready to discuss it, is just amazing. So I hope you get to subscribe and to download and to listen to a few of those, because they've been very insightful.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all that information. It was great.
You're welcome.
I like the fact that you offer a workbook. It's not just reading, you're actually doing. That's kind of a big deal for me. It tends to stick with me more if I'm doing as well. And
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we have about 8 minutes left. If there are any more questions, please feel free to either put it in the chat or unmute. I have received a whole bunch of great information today. I just wanted to ask about, I heard another phrase in your book about living intentionally by design. And I don't really know yet what that is referring to. I was wondering if you might touch on that.
Absolutely. So, those steps that I talked about earlier, you mentioned the personal mission statement, and living intentionally by design, that's one of the critical steps. So when we design our own personal mission statement, our own personal money stories, and we're redesigning, and that's a good thing, right? When we're intentional, we have the opportunity to redesign, to rework what we want our lives to look like. And the first step in that is that personal mission statement, and really crafting it aligned with our values, and crafting that we can do the money statement as a sub component. And then the personal financial identity is also part of that. Because then once you know that, you know how to hone the strengths and weaknesses, then we can design our goals around that, right? We can make our money decisions around that. So everything and you'll see the different components, in the book as you go along. It will become so clear how you can live intentionally by design. The holistic wealth method is also a key aspect of that, because if we're making our decisions and we're thinking about the holistic wealth method, where we're being intentional and we're thinking of each decision as an addition and a depletion to our holistic wealth bank account, that's also living intentionally by design. And with each decision, we're designing that lifestyle that we want. And there are other critical steps as laid out in the book that I'm sure I'm missing, but are clear there. And by the time you're done, you'll have a clear sense of, what you want that holistic wealth portfolio to look like. And it all starts with your story of self, which I go through in the book too, and your background, your experiences. Everything forms part and parcel of that. And we all have that opportunity to design that life very intentionally moving forward in our post-COVID world, and what we want that to look like in terms of our own life and our families, which is amazing. And that also gives us hope, that we have some agency and power in our own lives to actually structure what we want our lives to look like, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it even energizes me right now because I know I can do that. So I'm hoping everyone gets a chance to do that and to check out the book and the podcast so that we can all get working on that right away. And I think from this session, we all have some concrete ideas, at least at a minimum, at least 2 or 3 that we can put into action from tonight's session alone. And then once you get the book, then you're even clearer on lots more things that you can do to start living intentionally.
Absolutely. I've just, I think I've put all of these links in the chat. Let me know if I haven't. Official website, the Institute on Holistic Wealth, the quiz should be in the chat already. And the book, one book is out already, and the second book will be out on March the 8th, expanded and updated. But here's the link for the podcast. I think that is in the chat as well. And a link to the article that was mentioned earlier. I just wanted to thank Keisha again for doing this, because that's a wealth of information, and I really appreciate your doing this today. And if you have feedback, please put it in the chat, or I'll give you a link for feedback as well. It's always appreciated. Thank you, Keisha.
Thank you so much for having me. It was amazing sharing about holistic wealth with everyone this evening, and I hope everyone enjoyed the session and have clear takeaways with what they want to go implement right now in their lives. I hope you all get the book and pre-order the Holistic Wealth Expanded and Updated Edition. And of course, subscribe to the podcast, and I hope to hear from all of you on social media, on Instagram, on Twitter. I'm Keisha Blair, so it's at Keisha Blair. Let's connect there on social media, and my website is keishablair.com. And I do hope that you do listen into the podcast and then connect with me as well. I'm always happy to hear from readers and to listeners.
And they can contact you right from the website?
And they can contact me right from the website, and it's info@keishablair.com. So that's easy to remember. So it's just info@keishablair.com. And that's the email. And you can send me an email if you're interested in anything or anything on the Institute that you've seen that you have an interest in and you want to explore further. Again, it's info@keishablair.com, and you can contact me there, and I'll be happy to respond.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the week and stays safe. And please feel free to check out this great information. Thank you again, and have a great evening. Thank you.